Good evening, everybody. The special meeting of the Joliet City Council to go over the budget is now here on December 7th, 2020 with the Mayor Bob Odekirk presiding. Call the roll, please.
Mayor Odekirk.
Here.
Councilwoman Gavin.
Here.
Councilman Hug.
Here.
Councilman Morris.
Here.
Councilman Mudrin.
Here.
Councilwoman Coleman.
Here.
Councilwoman Reardon.
Here.
Councilman Turk.
Here.
First is citizens to be heard on agenda items. No one registered to be called to speak this evening. We received no email comments. I do not believe anyone is here to speak. So next on the agenda this evening is a motion to receive the city manager's recommended 2021 budget. Is there a motion to receive the recommended 2021 budget?
So moved. Second.
Been motioned and seconded to approve. Councilwoman Gavin.
Aye.
Councilman Hug.
Aye.
Councilman Morris.
Aye.
Councilman Mudrin.
Aye.
Councilwoman Coleman.
Aye.
Councilwoman Reardon.
Aye.
Councilman Turk.
Aye.
Next is the presentation, discussion on the city manager's recommended 2021 budget.
Mayor and members of the council, at this time I'd like to present and introduce our finance director, James Gadati, who will walk us through the presentation.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before I get started, I'd like to say something. As we all know, today is December 7th, a day which Franklin Roosevelt said, a day which will live on in infamy. I don't think he was talking about my budget presentation, but this day, 79 years ago, Pearl Harbor was attacked. Over 24 Americans were killed, 15 ships were sunk or damaged, and over 200 aircraft were destroyed. At this moment, I'd like to take a moment of silence to give to our fallen heroes, especially those that come from the Great War. Thank you. Today, I present to you the 2021 City Manager's recommended budget. You all have a hard copy. The PDF copy is on our website, should anybody want to access it there. And let me start with, as in past years, we have, looking at our total revenues, $297 million, and that would be that number down there. That is page 7 on your hard copy. That would be our projected revenues for all 25 of our funds. We are now up to 25. This year we added the tax increment financing fund number 6 and the vehicle replacement fund. On the next page, you will see our expenditures. We are recommended $324 million worth the expenditures. And as you can see, that's more than our revenues. However, remember, many of these expenditures are capital items, which we have accumulated assets. So for example, the Water and Sewer Improvement Fund, there's $17 million. That's assets that we've accumulated in the water fund. The general capital improvement fund, that's another 13 million. The motor fuel fund, that's 17 million. So those three capital items added together make up the difference between the revenues and the expenditures. Most of our funds are balanced, except for the parking fund, and we will get to that later. On page 9 of your budget, well, that's actually page 8, it shows what the ending fund balance or net position of all of our funds would be. And we are looking at roughly $244 million. Remember that our net position for our enterprise funds, it includes assets in there. In our other governmental funds, the assets are put into what's called an entity-wide financial statement. So that's why you may see in the water fund, $245 million. That's our assets plus our liquid assets, which would be cash investments and the like. We have three basic operating funds. Our general fund, which the recommendation is revenues will equal expenditures of $180.9 million. The water and sewer fund, we have revenues of $62.2 million and expenditures of $62.6 million. A slight use of a net position of about $400,000. But also in that fund, we've included $17.4 million in capital expenditures. The parking fund, as I described earlier, is we are looking at a very reduced amount of revenues, about $824,000. However, the expenditures are expected to be about $1.9 million. Quite frankly, it takes us as much to run the parking system, whether we get revenues or not. We still have to plow them, and we still have to maintain them. The parking fund is operating as it is right now, and the deficits will continue until revenues return to previous year's levels. Now, I know there's been some recommendations about the parking fund, but in this budget, it's operate as is. Of course, that can change during the year.
Question, Jim, and maybe Jim Hop, you could chime in. Other cities like Naperville or Morris that have free downtown parking, do they have a parking fund in their budget, or is that just considered an expense of doing business?
Well, most places that offer free parking in their downtown have a downtown TIF, and that TIF will pay for or subsidize the parking fund itself. So a special service area or a TIF can be established for that specific purpose, or as part of one of the expenditures within the TIF.
Thank you.
Yes, I agree. Within the next year, we're gonna have to do some work with this fund. Just a brief overview of our operating funds. Of course, the general fund supports all activities that are not in another special fund. That includes police and fire, planning and economic development, engineering, code enforcement, garbage collection, legal, financial, and just general administration. The water fund provides water and sewer system, which includes 3 wastewater plants, 594 miles of separate sanitary sewers, 26 wells, 11 water treatment plants, 665 miles of water main, 8,351 fire hydrants, and 38 lift stations. Quite a comprehensive fund here. In the parking fund, we operate 2 parking decks, 7 parking lots, 412 on-street meters, 19 on-street pay stations, and 700 on-street parking spaces. Our expenditures for those 3 operating funds, what is recommended is 11.5% decrease in the general fund, a increase of about 10%, but remember that is to fund the 17 million in capital projects, and we raised the rates November 1st to cover that. And the parking fund has a reduction of 3.18 million. But if you remember last year in the expenditure, we had 3 million in there to do a bond issue, which we decided not to do until we had a further study on our parking fund. So really, it's a very small decrease. Again, to run a parking system, it's hard to reduce the expenditures. It's a hard asset that needs to be taken care of. You can't say, I'm not gonna plow the snow on my parking lot because I can't afford it. In our general fund, again, we have 189.9 million, a decrease of 11.5 million over the 2020 budget. It includes a 4.9 increase in the property tax. Quite frankly, that property tax, we don't expect the rate to go up at all. We have about 8.77 increase in our value. So,
Jim, I'm interrupting you, I apologize. You said 4.9% increase in property tax. It's not the tax, it's the levy.
it's the levy, that's correct. That's
Before we get
why,
misquoted.
okay, I understand.
Thank you.
Our property tax, for anybody listening, it's the amount of your EAV times a rate. I expect the rate to go down, that's, or stay the same. We've had 2.6% in new construction and an increase of 2.3% for growth. So we would expect the rate to go down. Quite frankly, the development is helping us keep our taxes pretty level. There's a levy for the library, same as 2020, $6,024,000. As you recall, we floated a bond this year of $6.5 million for infrastructure improvements at the library, and it is estimated that this project will be completed next year. The one position that is requested is a facility assets manager. That is a person to help replace Mike Hewlett, who did the asset management. Facility asset manager will manage our buildings and start inventorying them and start moving some of these if we can, and make sure that we can keep them up. And also in there is assistant corporate counsel. We have that budgeted this year, but that hasn't been filled. We are recommending to fill that position.
Question.
Yes.
I don't know, Jim, if you'll answer it, or Jim Hopp will answer it. So what we had done is we had, in the position that Mike Eulis retired from several years ago, we had increased the responsibilities and the pay so that they would encompass the facilities asset management. Now we're creating a new position, so are we dropping the pay of the roads manager?
Yes, we are. That would be in the, if you bear with me, Public Works budget. I believe we dropped that pay. There we go.
At the same time, the roadways engineer position, we added the requirement of a civil engineering degree so that there's more versatility of that position in assisting the Department of Public Works. And then taking away the facilities management and moving it to this position. This position will also be responsible for all the custodial staff servicing City Hall, By Park, Union Station, Gateway Center, and the new bus facility.
We've dropped it about $30,000 in the Public Works budget.
What types of building assets is this new position gonna manage? I know that we've got a number of buildings, some of them which are basically vacant, other ones that are actually being used.
Yeah.
I'm trying to justify in my mind a full-time position with, $111,000 salary and benefits.
Well, the other thing that we are going to do is, I've been in negotiations with AFSCME about utilizing the person for some building inspector responsibilities during the first year of employment. Depending upon where that individual's skill level is, if it's plan review or building inspection or foundation inspections, that kind of thing. So they're in agreement with that for a temporary period of time. As we move forward, we intend on adding some additional responsibilities to this position. But if you will recall, we own the museum, we own the stadium. We're responsible for the new bus station being built, the Gateway Center, the old Union Station, City Hall, all of our water and sewer facilities all over the city, wastewater treatment facilities. And I think a few years ago, we had a study talking about the tens of millions of dollars of repair work that's needed in all of our facilities to keep them updated.
Okay. That's all for now.
in this recommended budget is to close the Bicentennial Park buildings, absorb the employees in other areas, and we've only budgeted to maintain that building, to keep the utilities on. The approximate savings would be $430,000.
Mayor?
Yes,
Jim, is that just for the 1 year? And then we'll take a look at it, closing of the Bi Park?
Correct.
Okay.
That's a yearly amount.
But I mean, we'll take another look at reopening it possibly the year after if we,
We will own and maintain the grounds and the facility. Look at alternative uses with other jurisdictions that are interested. But at any time, you as city council, if our gaming revenues increase over time as the year goes on, you can review and discuss adding programming back to the building.
and those employees will be absorbed into the
Workforce,
system.
yeah, yes. There will be no layoffs.
it's speculative right now, but with the vaccine coming, I think the thought process is next spring, next summer, things will start sliding back to normal.
Yeah.
How would they program, if it's June 1st and they're still closed and not employed there, how could they program anything for the summer?
Well, we'll be looking at, and I'll be discussing with the employees, those kinds of alternatives, because you've got that outdoor stage there, which lends itself to open-air activities and during COVID times, even if it is a high rate during the summer. So we probably will still have some outdoor programming.
Excuse me. Do you have any idea what number of employees we're talking about?
There are 4 employees down there.
The recommended budget includes a decrease for the police pension of $400,000, an increase in the fire pension of $486,000, and a decrease in the IMRF pension contributions about $800,000. Our IMRF rate actually went up about 0.8%, but because we're recommending not filling some positions, that's why that went down, the hard number. I will remind you that both the police and fire pensions, we have agreed with the pension board and of course the Illinois state statute that we will fund the required amount, and by 2040, we will be fully funded. Some things that are included in this budget is to, the $250,000 for the comprehensive plan was budgeted this year, but we put a hold on that until we could get a hold on what our revenues were gonna be, so that is added back in. The new bus facility, we let the bids on that a couple of meetings ago. The total amount is expected to be about $9.9 million. And that's gonna be funded with grants of $9.6 million. The rest, to close the gap, was budgeted this year, so it's just gonna be reappropriated for next year. We have recommended lowering the historical museum from $275,000 to $200,000. That's our contract that we have with them that runs out at the end of next year. So we are obligated to give the $200,000. The Will County Courthouse is the $500,000. We've committed to doing that for 20 years. We've done 2 years now. And there's a recommendation to fund the Rialto at $375,000, $100,000 less than what was budgeted this year. As you recall, we did not make the second payment that was budgeted for the Rialto. We did pick up their about $30,000 for their audit. So,
Question, Mayor. Yes. We just reviewed both in the Public Service Committee and here at the council, the fact that we awarded a contract, I can't remember the exact number, I want to say it was 8-point-some million, but we awarded a contract for the completion of the new bus facility with the turnarounds of the bus facility, and that actually the contract came in under the grant. So why are we paying more out of pocket? You know, I'm looking at, you know, when we look at these numbers, we have 9.7 million in grant money, and we're showing 9.9 million in expenditures, but the contract we just approved, actually, because the one question was, okay, since we came in several $100,000 below the actual grant money, what will that be used for? And we were told, well, if there's any change orders and such, and if not, then it would go back to the state most likely, you know? So why are we showing a deficit that we have to cover in the project?
Well, the city entered into an agreement with the state and with PACE, saying that we would have certain obligations and that the grant funding would go towards the construction and management of construction and certain items there. So that's why we have an expense, and if there are change orders on the construction, yes, the state has to approve that, and the grant money could be used for that. But we will still have our obligation for our costs, which should be fixed, much more so than the construction portion.
I'm presuming we don't have those itemized costs handy right now.
And-
Can we get that before the
Sure,
next meeting?
you
Okay,
bet.
thank you.
We did make a commitment of $160,000, which is budgeted this year. We haven't spent it, so. The captain's positions, all four have retired, so they've been removed from the budget per the contract with the Police Officers Association. Fire department overtime is pretty much flat, 2.1 million, and that's overtime, not reimbursable overtime.
Mayor,
Yes.
Jim or Jim, at what point, how many firefighters are we down now? Is there,
We are down, I think, 7 firefighters.
and at what point what's the break-even point to start adding firefighters to reduce overtime?
Well, this year we've had 9 positions. And I'm proposing to reduce it and take 7 of those out of the budget this year. Now, this is a fungible number, because if COVID spikes terribly, and I mean, you need ambulances to transport people. So, luckily we've, at any given time, there's 2 people off in the fire department. They can't even be used for overtime because they've got COVID. But after 10 days, they can come back. So it's hovering at a constant number where we have never had to take an ambulance out of service. And I think that the number proposed in the budget will continue that for us.
Mayor?
Yes.
And Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, none of us know for certain, other than what we see on the news, what's gonna happen in Washington as far as the second round of CARES Act. But the CARES Act, we could see several $1 million come in for frontline support again, like we did this past year.
We could, yes.
Okay.
There was 44.7 million requested for capital projects. What we're recommended is 13.8 million to be expended next year. All those projects are ongoing from this year, projects that we have held up. There's 62,000 for scales for overweight truck enforcement. 130,000, that's a continuation of the project that we started this year. We put in new door strikes for security at the police department. That was about 70,000, and we're gonna have to replace the cameras over there. 22,000 is for the signage outside of Migraine Theater, which we promised to do about 3-4 years ago, but the weather and the costs just haven't come in, so that's being rebudgeted. There's 2.4 million for our local share for the Cullinan project. That's budgeted this year and will be carried over to next year. We have not spent that yet. We've already went over the new bus station. 548,000 for new computer systems. Again, that was budgeted this year and it's just a carryover. 42,000 to connect our intermodal bridge cameras. That project is on hold, waiting to get approval from the powers that be. We may not get approval to do that, so that could be a savings there. We need to finish up the county courthouse parking lot. That was budgeted, most of it's done. We're looking at about 89,000 to finish that up and be done, and a little over 71,000 for a roadway improvement. Last year's budget, we established the vehicle replacement fund. That is a new fund, and it's, we borrowed, 4 million. We have approved 4.8 million in vehicles. All those vehicles have been ordered. About 20% have been delivered so far. Many of the vehicles take a long time to build. For example, we don't expect to get the ambulance till middle to fall next year. So for next year, we have budgeted 1.5 million revenue from the 3-cent gas tax. The actual list of vehicles at this time has not been decided yet. So we will bring that to council once we have a list that's been vetted. Quite frankly, our 3 cents gas tax is coming in greater than the 1.5 million so far. And next year will be the first year of our debt service on that 4 million that we borrowed. That debt will be paid off in 10 years. Also included in this budget, and this is the second year, so you probably won't see this in next year's presentation, is budgeting for the Union Station, the Gateway Center, and the Joliet Prison. This is our second year for most of those. As I said before, there's a request for the levy of 4.9%. We have budgeted gaming revenue, that's our casino revenue, and our video at 50%. What we're hoping for, like all of us, is we go back to normal by July 1st, and we will get 50% of our revenue from 2019 levels. When we opened up in April, the gaming revenue was at a 40% reduction. Of course, when they closed them down completely, it was at a 100% reduction. Hopefully, we can see better times. A small increase in the collection fee to match our increase in the contract that we signed a few years ago. And one thing that is not in the budget is stimulus. So if we get stimulus, I'm conservative, I don't like counting on it, but we can revisit all these issues and come back to the table and amend the budget. At this time, no new stimulus has been approved. Items that we did not include in this budget, remember, did not. Chicago Street improvements. The Chicago Street itself is budgeted in the motor fuel tax fund, but as you recall, the plaza across the street from the Rialto is not budgeted. Quite frankly, it's gonna take us a year, probably more, to redo Chicago Street from Jefferson up to Cass, and I think a little bit north of Cass too. But then the road would be done. That road is being done with Rebuild Illinois funds. If you remember, we got about 9.8 million from the Rebuild Illinois for shovel-ready projects, and we're ready. So, you know, we opened up Chicago from Washington to Jefferson. So that would be the next step. But there is nothing for the plaza and the streetscape. We have applied for a grant, so that may be coming too. There's no, as we said earlier, no money in here for building improvements. We need to, we did a study, I want to say 4 years ago. We need to update that study and start looking at our properties, getting an inventory, moving the ones that we can, and addressing the ones that we can't. Of course, we're all talking about the Victory Center, so that should be coming in the next few months. But we have many buildings and properties which we need to inventory and decide what we're gonna do with them in the long run. There's no increases for employees other than the Joliet Police Supervisors Association, which is already settled. Our union contracts ran out December 31st, 2019. Body cameras is not in this budget. What is in this budget is the ongoing Axon program, as you all know, that's the tasers. Our cars all now have a video in it, but in this budget, we have not addressed the body cameras.
Quick question.
Ma-
You're probably gonna answer my question. Go ahead, Councilwoman.
But Jim, could you possibly, since the election's over and everything, I'm sure Congressman Foster has been kind of busy, maybe this went off his radar. But, could you please send him a letter or contact him and ask him how he's doing with the grant money that he thought he could get for us?
Certainly.
Thank you.
You did answer my question.
One question to
Yes.
tag along with Councilwoman's request. We do have that opportunity in March to apply for the funding from the state regarding the body cameras, so we'd like to be on point with getting all of the data required for the grant, so I don't want that to slide either.
Well, all the money we can get, possibly get, federal and state both, I mean,
You bet.
because they're quite expensive to maintain. That's the problem with these body cams. The body cams themselves aren't that expensive.
I know.
It's the maintenance
that
of them.
Storage of data. And so with the state having that grant that will be opening up in March, and it is open until May. So if we can get ourselves in position to apply for that grant as well.
We're still pay-as-you-go on our retirees' health care. We do have an unfunded liability of $580 million. And one of my goals was to start doing some long-range financial planning, especially a 5-year plan. As you know, my budget analyst retired in March. I'll blame Ken for the COVID too, so that position is not funded. My goal is to start looking at a 5-year plan in next year's budget. Hopefully, we can get back to it, but quite frankly, I'm down 3 positions, so my finance department is just keeping up. And we're doing well, but I'd like to be more forecasting.
Mayor? Jim, and if you could briefly just explain, it's a big number for somebody watching on the 580 million for retiree health care. Explain what that means and over what period of years that's extended.
That's expended over the life of our retirees. So basically 30 to 40 years, we have made a promise to pay health insurance for all of our retirees. It's a funded, much like a pension fund. As a matter of fact, the courts have ruled, one of our rulings is that retirees' health care is a pension benefit, so it cannot be diminished for current retirees. 580 million is a large number. If we put $1 million a year away, it'd take 580 years to fund it. But we are paying for it. But as we go on, we're gonna have more retirees and it's gonna keep on growing. At some point, we're gonna have to address this long-range unfunded liability.
Well, and what's the number, when we have new retirees added, that's something we can figure out each year by the number of people retired. For lack of a more eloquent way to say it, how many are dying on average per year?
I don't know.
It's something because you're right, how much did we spend in the budget last year for retiree benefits?
I will get to that when we get to the human resources. There is a point on that. But quite frankly, we're adding more retirees than are passing. And
Mayor?
that's,
I just want to make the comment that, based on studies, we're 200 million higher than the city of Chicago on this liability. And I think, like the city of Chicago, they adopted a policy that all new hires do not get retiree health care. Now, you still have that liability, but it's not going to continue to grow in future years once you so-called stop that bleeding. So it's something I highly recommend, that a goal that we pursue for future hires.
Is that something that would be wrapped up in the contract negotiations?
Yes, it would be for any union that we have, that'd be a contractually negotiated provision.
This is a graph that shows our revenues, 180.9 million. As you can see, sales tax is the highest. It used to be higher, but we have a pretty diverse tax here that hopefully, if one tax goes down, the other one would go up. The gaming tax is way down. That's the 9% there. This is the hard numbers based on what we just seen. As you can see, in 2020, we budgeted 192 million, and in 2021, we're looking at 180 million. So, let's this thing do that. Here's a graph of our expenditures by department. It's not unusual from cities. Our highest departments are, of course, the police and fire. Our human resources department's a little high, but remember, all of our health care is paid out of the human resources budget. And that's the same with the finance. It looks a little high, but our entire garbage fee is paid out of the finance department. So that's a little over $11 million. This graph shows by expenditure classification, and the one thing that's kind of eye-popping here is 80% of our budget is salaries and benefits. It leaves us very little to cut unless we get to employees. Here's our expenditure by classification. As you can see, the payroll is down about 1.9%, benefits 1.7%, slight increase in our professional supplies. All the other items are down quite a bit. About 6.2 million or 3.3% we recommended cutting out of the expenditures. Like prior years, each department, you can go through this yourself, but what I like to point out is our 2020 budget did receive the Government Finance Officers Association Distinguished Budget Award. So not only do we receive the Certificate of Excellence for our audit, we received one for our budget. So we are reporting at the highest level. We're recommending no change in fund balance. It's a balanced fund. Our goal is to have a 20% fund balance. This budget will bring us a little bit down, not this budget, but 2020. We'll look at that later. But we still have almost 23% in our unassigned fund balance. Now, if we can get to the departments. There's two things in the human resources. Miscellaneous salaries, that's the third point in salary payouts on retirement. Those used to be paid out of the human resources. Since we implemented the Tyler Munis payroll system, those dollars now follow the department which they worked in. So those are no longer budgeted in the HR department. They're budgeted in the department that the person would work in. This is hospitalization to Councilman Hugg's question. We budgeted $23.5 million for healthcare. About 40% or 9.4 million is that for retirees. That percentage will continue to go as more and more retirees outlast our people who are no longer on the rolls. And also in this budget, $125,000 for protective clothing This includes the steel toe shoes and the agreed protective clothing for our city workers. In our community development department, we do have the, what we call subsidies. We went over those earlier. The Rialto is about 100,000 less, and the museum is 75,000 less. The rest are consistent with past years. Again, there is 250,000 to start our citywide comprehensive plan. Also in the community development department, tax rebates is at about 700,000. Those are rebates that we give for development. So they are paid out of the community development department. We made a change in this year's budget. Buildings and grounds, the Bicentennial Park, the Gateway Center, the prison, and the Union Station have all been moved from the Public Works Department to the Community Development Department. The Economic Development Director has been moved out of the city manager's budget into this budget. And it doesn't include that additional person of facilities asset manager.
When will that position be published?
That's up to the council if they pass it.
I mean, is it something we intend to fill immediately and start the process, or wait and see what happens with the revenues as it pertains to COVID, first half of the year?
No, that would be, if you adopt the budget, that would be a position we would fill right away.
So you'd advertise and?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
In the city manager's budget, as past years, we put 15,000 in for the equipment of Channel 6, should they need it. They have equipment that, breaks down during the year and we need to replace it. We have removed the funding for an economic development specialist. As you know, our economic development director / assistant city manager has since left. We promoted the economic development specialist to the economic development director and removed not funded his position. There's no assistant city manager. That position has not been recommended. And we removed it from the budget, the cost of a Washington lobbyist of $114,000 and included $13,000 for the Will County Lodging Association.
Jim, if I can interrupt at this point, last year the city gave a $10,000 grant to the Will County Lodging Association if they matched $20,000 of that. This year, I'm proposing this $13,000 contribution, and what that does is it pays for the membership of every hotel and motel in Joliet as a member of the Will County Lodging Association. With the increase in the hotel motel tax, and I think it's appropriate to, they've done a very good job at promoting tourism through their website and booking lodging, and our revenues will increase as COVID falls off and our tourism and hotel stays start increasing again.
Jim, have you considered if there will be any impact on cutting the economic development specialist, downsizing the department?
Well, I believe that Derek has done a really good job in promoting economic development here in the community. With the removal of the assistant city manager / economic development director position, I thought it was more appropriate to have that position under the community development director, although giving Derek that title of director because he deals with a lot of developers and corporations, and they need to know that Derek has the authority in these meetings to make decisions that come from the city, from your committee, Councilman Hugg, from the city manager's office and everywhere else. So we don't plan on refilling that economic development specialist position at this time.
So essentially what you're saying is Derek is in the position of economic development director, and now he'll be, by definition, 100% focused on development, and will have no responsibilities in the city manager office.
That's correct.
Okay.
In the legal budget, we are requesting 1.4 million for contracted and professional services. And that's down about 200,000 from this year. We budgeted legal claims at about $500,000. That is a budget. Of course, we make settlements all the time. Some years, the lowest year we had was about 250,000, and the highest year was over 3 million. And it includes funding for assistant corporate counsel. This was budgeted but not filled in the 2020 budget. And this, our corporate counsel will start looking at bringing stuff in-house rather than hiring outside contractors. So that's, goes hand in hand with the first point.
So, excuse me. So having said that, you're not going to retain Clark Baird Smith anymore?
It's not my department.
I'm leaving it up to corporate counsel to determine what area of expertise that she thinks can make the biggest financial dent, so to speak, a reduction in our contracting out, whatever we can bring in-house. So I've yet to talk to her where she feels the greatest return in this investment will be.
Okay.
So I don't have an answer for you.
Okay, thank you.
And I do believe when we originally, as a council, eliminated many of the in-house positions and went to an outside contracting format, it saves a little bit of money, but the amount of work for the outside contractor has gone up each year. But I do remember a presentation after the first year, 2 years, I think it was, showing how when we had in-house, how high the settlements were compared to what they were coming in now with specialists. I think we need to have an analysis from the day that we did that to current, if we can get somebody to do that.
Very good.
Thank you.
In our information technology department, we have not recommended not funding one system administrator position. That position was opened up earlier this year, and we are still recommending not filling that. The IT department thinks they can keep us going without that position. In the fire department, there was an increase for the firefighters. I already talked about the overtime, and we have removed the funding for 7 firefighters. Now, I left in the positions, but I funded them at 0. So if we get additional funds or something should change, we can add those back into the, now they are hiring because they have more than 7 openings right now. I think it's 9, isn't it, Jim?
Yes.
Yeah. In my department, we have an ongoing cost for our computer system. It's about $410,000. In my department, we have the ballpark. Right now, we're budgeting $201,000. There's 2 parts of that. There's the part that the city is responsible for, and the part that we reimburse the slammers for their expenses per our contract. Again, there's 2 positions in the finance department, the budget officer and the financial assistant. We have removed funding for those 2 positions. Again, we can keep going day-to-day business, but the professional forecasting part of my department is put on the back burner. The police department, there was a decrease in their pensions of 400. Overtime is budgeted consistent with prior years. Again, that does not include reimbursable overtime. We have removed the funding for 10 police officers and 6 dispatchers. Again, those positions are left in, but the funding is put at 0. And it does include the $675,000 for the Axon, what used to be known as TASER program. The goal is to have every one of our officers on the street with less than lethal weapon. In the Public Works Department, we have budgeted, consistent with prior years, money for the tree removal, the Hobart Road, the downtown plane. That may not be necessary, but we budgeted because it may be necessary depending on what goes on with the floodplain. Some for the sidewalk program and the Gateway, Union Station, Joliet Prison, and have all been moved to the Community Development Department, hence the facility manager's position.
Before we move on, Jim, did you give an estimate that I missed for revenues from the ballpark to the city to offset the expenditures for next year?
That's in the revenue portion. Yes, there, it's in there. It's 75,000 rent and part of the naming rights. We have not received our naming rights yet this year. They have paid their rent though. With that, I'll move on to the Water and Sewer Fund. We include 62.2 million in system revenues. Expenditures include 13 million in depreciation. And it's, looks like a 10.7 increase, but most of that is increase due to debt. As you know, we've did a lot of IEPA loans in the past, so that's moved up. Depreciation has moved up $1 million, and we are recommending an additional 550,000 to be transferred to the reserve fund. We keep, recommendation is keep service levels consistent, provides increased cost in the agent system, mainly starting to replace our water meters. It also includes 17.4 million in capital improvements. And the way that this is significant is if you see our depreciation it depreciates about 13 million. So we're adding 17 million in assets. So we're starting to put a dent in those years where we didn't increase our assets. We are hoping that we won't have to float bonds for our operating fund, but the reserve fund is another story. So, as you know, I think we have a 6.2 increase at November 30th. One more increase has been approved for 2021, and then we will have to come back to council or not if we're going to increase rates again. Again, almost 40 million in infrastructure improvements from IEPA loans. We are recommending 1.1 million transfer to the Water Replacement Reserve Fund. This is a fund that we're going to do our Rethink Water out of. At this time, Allison is asked to budget 20 million, but that for the Rethink Water, replace our water source, but that will be funded by a revenue bond. So we have a lot of meetings, a lot of we haven't chosen a source yet, for example. So this is very volatile. It could change. As last year, we're starting to build a reserve fund for the water center, and we're recommending a $500,000 transfer. Again, like all enterprise funds, you can see 93% comes from our rates. Fines and fees and other are like rents. We rent our tower for cell phones and that, cell phone antennas. Our fines and fees are way down due to adjudication being way down. Plus, we have not charged any penalties since March. And that is going to be turned off until the end of the year by the emergency decree that we have here at the city. We do not and are not doing any shut-offs other than for theft, if someone is stealing. But for non-payment of, water bills, we have not shut off in quite a while. This is, shows by department where we're spending our money. And the real interesting part you should look at is our debt service is at 11.4 million. As we borrow IEPA loans and float, bonds, we only have 2 bonds left, so those will be paid off. But it's the IEPA loans that we're gonna have to pay back. Next year, the debt service is 11.4 million. It's larger than any of our departments. As you can see, payroll and benefits are 28%. This is an enterprise fund, so most of the expenditures, unlike the general fund, are for upkeep of the infrastructure, our plants, our lift stations. So where we have almost 80% in the general fund, in the water fund, it's about 28%. Our parking fund, again, our revenues are way down. We all know nobody's parking downtown because our businesses have been stymied, if not brought back to 25, 50%, some are downright closed. Our operating expenditures is a small increase from our 2020. It's still gonna cost us about 1.9 million to operate this parking system. So our operating revenues are less, about 1 million, than our operating expenditures. This is a fund we clearly have to look at in the next year and make some hard decisions. And that's, plan for the parking system needs to be developed in 2021 for long-term stability. And the deficits will continue, as I said. This is where our revenues are come from. Most of them are from the parking deck, but as you know, a lot of that revenue come from the Rialto. As they're not showing shows, we're not bringing in the revenue that we need to maintain this system. And you can see the operations is the bulk of the expenditures. Collections, that's what we pay our cashiers to collect the money for the parking system. And the other on there that's depreciation. So,
Jim, were you able to extrapolate an estimate of how much revenue we've lost on both deck and surface because of the number of people that are telecommuting currently versus having gone to the office by train before?
No, we don't know why people are not parking. So, you know, sometimes it's because there's no entertainment, sometimes there's no travel, but our revenue is about 48% of what it was in prior years.
Okay, thank you.
With that, that's our 2021 recommendation. If there's no questions, I'd like to talk about where we're at.
I'd like to ask a question of,
Yes,
as we go through the budget, I want to ask about, I saw nothing in there regarding the cannabis tax that we're to receive. And so I'd like to know if there's an opportunity that though you know you'll be getting those funds in. I'd like to see a separate line item in our budget that those monies are put aside for those areas that were designated for the War on Drugs campaign. And so can you talk a little bit about that? Where are we with that, or what can happen there?
Well, I'm kind of in a hard place. I cannot disclose to you how much cannabis tax we get, because I signed an agreement with the state of Illinois that I will not disclose individual sales tax or tax amounts. So the the Illinois Municipal League and the IGFOA are both gonna go to our legislature and allow those numbers to be, disclosed. It's not just here. The state of revenue, and I think I sent you their opinion from the Department of Revenue, that I cannot disclose individual amounts. But if that is changed, or if I get another finding, yes, we will separate that from all the other line items.
So to me, just for my clarification, if the state sends down an amount for the county every month, is that the same thing, or?
It's the same thing, but the county has many more. It's like the hotel tax. I can tell you how much hotel we get in whole, but I can't tell you how much each hotel got. Well, since the city of Joliet only has 2 cannabis dispensaries, the state is telling me that that would give the competitors unfair advantage, because they would know how much sales they have. Whereas you wouldn't know that from the Will County amount. So the Will County can disclose the total amount, just like our food and beverage, our hotel tax. I can disclose the total. It's right in the budget. Every year it's in there, prior years. That question you ask is the question I get most asked. I wish I could, but the state Department of Revenue, and I sent the email to everybody. If you want to see it again, I'd be more than happy to show you, but they have told me that I cannot disclose individual amounts at this point.
And so having said that, and we'll go back to what you said at first, as soon as you are able to, it will be placed on a separate line item in our budget?
Correct.
Okay.
As soon as I'm able to. And they were going to introduce it in the veto session, but they canceled the veto session, so. It's one of those, like I said, statewide, people want to know, because we're all reading the paper, and, the sales, how much they're up, and quite frankly, sales of alcohol and the sale of cannabis is the 2 things that are up, so.
Keeping everybody.
Everybody's home, I guess.
Well, that's good,
dealing
because
with it,
now I can report back to the constituents that are calling me and asking me those questions, and working on a proposal to submit to us as the council for a plan for that. So yeah, I'll take that back to them, and but we know it will get on the website.
If they change the legislature, yes.
Okay.
So, again, I would argue that the 3% is not a sales tax, but they argue that it is a tax, and that I can't disclose it, so.
Mayor?
Yes.
Before Jim takes any additional questions or wraps up, I had a few comments of my own here.
Okay.
Number one was, and back when I was here full-time, I'm sure you may remember me saying, but one of the things that the city has gotten into a trap with is we are the only city in the state of Illinois with a casino that includes their casino income in their annual budget.
Jim, I think there's someone in your microphone.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. So we are the only city that includes casino revenue in our annual budget. Everybody else waits a full year, sees what they get in revenues, and then allocates and
Yeah, hold on a second.
It's a short in there.
Thank you. So again, every city in Illinois that has casinos waits till they collect their casino revenue and then budgets the expenditure the following year. I think we used to do that when we first had the casino revenues coming in, but over the years, slowly but surely, we ate away into it for other capital expenditures, and now we're very reliant on it. And that's our biggest dive in revenues this year, is the 50% reduction in the gaming revenue. That's one thing. The other thing is, another thing that's not in this budget and has never been in the budget, but back when I negotiated the use of the second floor banquet facility in Union Station, there's a clause in there that says that the city can use it one night each year. And the purpose of that was to have a board and commission appreciation dinner. All of our board and commissioners have, and I used to do this, and Jim knows this in different cities. We would give out 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, even 30-year awards to our board and commissioners. They'd bring their spouse, and it's the one night a year that we can really say thank you for all the work that you do and dedication for the unpaid jobs serving on our boards and commissions. The other thing I want to point out is that Jim put together this budget without the use of fund balance. When we went to bond the 4 million recently, the raters kept looking at us saying, well, you're using fund balance to balance your budget. And you kind of scratch your head and say, well, yeah, you save money, can't you use it the next year? And they frowned upon that. So I kudos to Jim putting together this budget without that use of fund balance and maintaining the high fund balance that you've expected, that you've set it as a goal of 20%, and we're almost 23%. I want to distribute something to you now I want to talk about. Thank you.
Thank you.
So several weeks ago, I attended a meeting of the fireworks committee. And I was told that my predecessor promised money for the fireworks because we increased the hotel and motel tax. And I said, really? You think there's been a lot of tourism this year? So in an effort we are proposing to decrease contribution to the museum $75,000 and to the Rialto $100,000. And so I came up with this idea of a way to help them in support of their self-sufficiency. And that would be that we would have the cultural car raffle, giving away an automobile and $15,000 cash. The cash would pay for the tax value would pay the taxes for the car and the cash itself. After $40,000, but this meeting started off saying that we can't have the fireworks anymore at the parks at Inwood because they're putting artificial turf on the ball diamonds. So where's it going to be? So it's going to be out at Joliet Junior College because they've got the big parking lot and all that land. I've enlisted the sponsors of Terry Darcy that will get a discounted vehicle for the car raffle, and also the Three Rivers Construction Alliance will serve as sponsors by helping with setup and cleanup at the JJC property site and parking lot for that event. So proposing 5,500 tickets sold at $50 each will raise $275,000. After $40,000 for the fireworks going to the Parks District Foundation, there'd be a 50-50 split between the Rialto and the museum. So in an effort to jumpstart this, the city would be purchasing the vehicle, and then the money raised would pay the $15,000 cash prize, and then the money would go to the appropriate parties to help them with their operational costs that we're cutting. So these organizations, I believe, are on board. This is a sketch of how it would work. There would be no handling of cash. A vendor would be hired with an 800 number. You'd call up, give them your Visa card, get your ticket, and it would be mailed directly to you. And then on the 4th of July, the winning ticket would be drawn and the car awarded. So,
May I ask you a question?
sure.
For the independent vendor, will they be doing advertising and setting up websites to purchase and?
Well, that would be part of the operation itself. Yeah, a website would be set up for this, for advertising. But the other thing is that you've got the patrons of the Rialto, you've got the patrons of the museum. Both those organizations can do marketing outreach to their membership and to their constituency, as well as the committee that puts together the fireworks also has a constituency, and the Parks District Foundation will do that as well. So there'll be a lot of marketing by all these organizations as opposed to just one, or just relying on a vendor to do the marketing of this.
The reason I ask is I actually have done a similar thing like this with the Historical Museum years ago. We were co-chairs for their gala, and we did this with a Harley Davidson.
Oh,
And so it's a great idea, and it did work out. We did, meet our goals, but it's not always easy to sell, and we weren't selling anywhere near 5,500 tickets. So that's why I asked if they're setting up something where people can call in and do this, or.
yeah. Well, this is December and we're talking about 4th of July. So hopefully there's enough time and events that will actually happen where all you have to do is pass out the brochure. Again, nobody's taking any money, here, take a look at this and do it on your own. So that is the hope.
Mayor?
Yes.
Jim, I didn't see in your presentation, and maybe I missed it. As part of the 5,500 tickets sold, assuming they all get sold, will that be a portion of that reimbursing the cost of this vehicle to the city?
No.
And
No.
what's the cost of the vehicle?
Well, don't ruin my negotiations with
All
Mr.
right.
Darcy.
Let us know at a
giving
later
you
date.
Number.
Let us know at a later date. I'm just trying to get a handle if we're gonna
But
spend.
council will have to approve the purchase of that vehicle, so it will be on an agenda.
Wait a minute, didn't we just name a street after him?
Why wouldn't we include as part of this, that's part of the cost of doing business, reimbursement from the 275,000 for the vehicle? Why wouldn't we?
Why wouldn't we? Good question. I agree.
All right, keep that in your mind.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Jim, did you say the taxes was 15,000?
Yeah, if you figure 25%, it's gonna be 12,500, plus you're gonna have to pay taxes on the 15,000 itself, which would be another 25%. So that'll, we want the person who wins the car to keep the car, be able to afford it.
Terry, your tax bracket will put you at 38%. Mayor, I had a comment I wanted to make in response to Councilwoman Gavin's subject she brought up about the marijuana taxes. Myself and Jim Gaddotti have had a couple of lengthy conversations about this, so it's good that you brought it up, Councilwoman Gavin. Number one, I want to make it clear to the people watching after that conversation, I was listening to the explanation. This is not the inability to release the exact numbers of taxes, sales taxes collected on marijuana. That was not specifically to protect marijuana. This is what the state Department of Revenue regulations require for all businesses. So if you were to ask how much taxes are collected by Walgreens, we cannot do that because of the regulations, because of unfair trade practices or competition. I want people to understand that. And with our marijuana seller, you had mentioned that we have 2 marijuana stores in Joliet, Jim, but actually they're owned by the same entity. So we really only have one company in Joliet. And the other thing I wanted to clarify is some people, I've gotten quite a few calls like you alluded to, Jim. I'm sure you too have, Betty, right? It is not all the taxes collected by marijuana by the city that goes into the program you're referring to. It's a very small, specific tax that was outlined in the bill, the 3% tax. All the rest of the taxes go into the general fund and will remain in the general fund. And I think did I cover that correctly, Jim?
Well, you got it opposite. The 3% does come back to us.
What's the total percentage on
The
it?
sales tax goes into a pool that is governed by the cannabis law how the state distributes that.
And there's a portion of that redistribution which has to be dedicated to the programs we're discussing, Betty was discussing.
It
But it's
doesn't
not
have
the
to be. It's
entire
up to
amount.
policy.
It's not the entire amount.
Correct,
It's a
correct.
defined smaller portion.
I
Okay.
would like to remind the people who put it in there that they promised to give $10,000 to this when they were up here at the dais. So I don't know where that happened because we didn't make it part of the city, settlement, so. So with that, we talked a lot about, what's budgeted for next year. When I came here in March, we were talking about, the tsunami and the revenue falls and where are we at right now. So I'd like to take a few minutes. It won't take long. This is a terrible, slide, and I apologize, but, if you look, it's on page 38 of your budget. 28, I'm sorry. I said 38. So, our estimated year end, it looks like about a use of 5.3 million. That's a lot less than what I expected back in March. However, several things have happened. And even at that, we still will keep over a 20% fund balance at the end of next year. But we track our cash and investment balance every day in the finance department. So if you look, last year at the end of November, we had about $43 million. At the end of November this year, we have about 38 million. However, that spread is about $4 million. And that's about what we're looking at for the deficit for this year. When we first met with the unions, before we knew we were gonna get stimulus, we were talking about our balance going down below 20 million. The closest we got, like in August, about 3 days, we were below the 30 million. So right now, we have about $38 million. You can see last year we finished with about 42 million. So that's the liquid portion of our fund balance. It's a pretty high percentage.
Jim, a quick question. And what would it have been if we got no stimulus, no CARES Act money? There we go.
City of Joliet stimulus funds. We received almost 7 million from the CARES Act. That's through the county. We received 459,000. That was through the state. We were allocated 343, and I was just informed we have received that at the end of November. And we have $1 million yet to come, and that was submitted last week. We have received approval from the county for that amount, and that amount will probably be here in the next 2 weeks. So to answer your question, about $6 million less than what we have now.
So without stimulus and grants, CARES Act and so forth, we'd actually be closer to about $12 million in debt.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Correct. And we would be standing here asking for more cuts.
And we still have to keep that in our minds moving into 2021 because we don't know what they're gonna do in Washington.
That's correct. They were arguing today about it, that's all I can tell you. And there's all kinds of rumors, stuff on the table. The president-elect has said even if they pass a stimulus by the end of this year, he will be looking for another one next year. As I said with the casino, I hope by July 1st, we're back to normal. I believe by the end of the year, the vaccine's gonna be available, not widely available, but the manufacturer of it is typical Americans, just like we were talking about World War II. When we gear up, and we can build, we can produce fast. So I believe probably by the July 1st that we'll be back to fully open and normal. Am I right?
Yes.
Come back in July. And
Your mouth to God's ears.
so many of the things that we recommended not funding, again, if we come with another 7 million, we can add all those positions back at a later time. Those positions are not filled right now. We're not recommending laying anybody off. And I think this is the softest and the easiest way to get from point A to point B, since really none of us know. This is unprecedented times. But the stimulus and our strong fund balance, I think we're gonna weather the storm.
Mayor, I'd like to just add that, although this budget is restrictive, you can revisit it on a quarterly basis or more often if you like, as revenues potentially improve throughout the course of the next fiscal year and make adjustments that you deem are necessary. And the good news is actually we're far better off than a lot of cities in Illinois. We're lucky to be in a county that even qualifies for the CARES Act funding at the federal level because of our size. And we've got a stable tax base, a growing tax base. It was awfully shocking to me coming here in August to find out that we issued as many building permits in 2020 as we did in 2019. So growth is still occurring in the community, and we all know that we've had dozens of major economic development renovations and packages, and we're anticipating that continuing into the next year. I would be remiss, I want to thank Jim Gadati again for spending what's probably hundreds of hours on putting together this budget. The fact that he gets the annual GFOA award is recognition of his hard work and his staff work, and I enjoy working closely with him in preparation of the budget and presenting it to you this evening.
I agree. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Jim.
I recall when we had, I think it was April or May, we had the emergency budget meeting when we first were seeing the effects of COVID and the shutdown. You made some dire predictions. And what followed predictably was in every news cycle, Joliet was going bankrupt, Joliet was going to run out of money. So I know internally there were some discussions about whether it was wise to put it out there in front of people exactly, where we thought we were going to be, because that time it was all projections. And although it did, I think, create a false impression with some people, I want to compliment you for being out in front of it. We were, as far as I know, one of the first communities in Illinois to come out and talk about what the shutdown is going to mean in dollars and cents. So, we invited some criticism on ourselves for people who don't understand the process or don't understand what you were saying. But I think it was responsible. I think the people of Joliet need to know that we're being responsible. We're being upfront and honest about this. I thought talk of layoffs was premature last spring or during the summer. Turns out I was right, but I will compliment you and our staff for coming forward with some hard truths at the time, so everyone knew what we were facing, knew what we had to do to get to this point. So again, thank you, and thanks to the council for working through this.
Thank you. Done?
Mayor? Yes.
The plan at this time is to schedule our public hearing at our next pre-council meeting on the 14th, and then on the 15th, we will have all of the ordinances prepared for you for adoption of the proposed budget and all of the tax levies.
That's fine. Does anyone need any additional meetings about the budget? Excuse me. No?
No.
Okay.
This is the best budget meeting we've ever had.
Thanks, Jim.
Next on the agenda would be appointments. Tonight, the mayor is recommending Herb Landy be appointed to serve as councilman at large.
I believe Mr. Landy's here, if you'd like to address the council.
Well, I found all this fascinating. I learned a lot. And I appreciate the opportunity of being considered as an interim councilman. I've spoken to all of you, I believe, and if you have any questions, just ask.
Any questions? Yes.
So, Mr. Landy, as you know, it was, the timing might have not been perfect for everybody, but I've gotten calls from individuals after the Herald News article about your support of the mayor. And part of that then came, would you be still an independent thinker? It's okay to support, obviously, any of us here. They didn't comment on anybody else who might have supported.
Well, that's the Herald News.
Okay.
So I didn't care for the last administration. I thought they were going in the wrong direction. I thought they were taking Joliet in the wrong direction. And I thought Mayor Odegaard was a fresh idea. And I put my money where my mouth is. So I backed him. I would do the same for any of you, all right? If I believe in you. But yeah, everything was above board. And nothing was hidden. Nothing was out of ordinary.
Thank you.
We don't print it $1,000 I give to charity as well. We give money to Special Olympics. We give money to St. Jude. I believe we're working on a program to give thousands of dollars to children who have no benefits for Christmas. So we do a lot. We do a lot.
Any other questions?
Mayor?
Yes.
I don't have a question because Mr. Landy did call all of us, as he had stated too. My conversation with Mr. Landy was brief, along the same lines as what I had, questions I had last time. And when he had called up, I said, look, I'm not going to ask you. I don't care how you intend to vote or think you might vote on any of the issues that people are discussing. I'd just like you to tell me what's your process in making decisions. We chatted about that, and he's a successful businessman. He's very generous locally. I am also a big researcher, so obviously as soon as you made your announcement, I called around and I knew of Mr. Landy. I had met him briefly on some occasions, and by the end of the conversation, we both agreed that it's none of my business and that he will vote his conscience based on the facts. I think I summed it up pretty well, Mr. Landy, our conversation.
And to address Mr. Mudrin, or Councilman Mudrin, forgive me, sir, is Mayor Oder will tell you I disagree with him as often as I agree with him. We've had that conversation. And
Everybody does.
I'm not his rubber stamp. So I think independently, I work independently, and ask Bob, if I can call him Bob, I'm sure I'm allowed to do that still. We don't always agree. Now, do we, Mayor?
No.
And I'm pretty vocal when we don't. So I think it's healthy. It's healthy to have different ideas.
Is there a motion to appoint Herb Landy to serve as councilman at large?
So moved.
Second.
Been motioned and seconded to approve. Councilwoman Gavin?
Mr. Landy, I am going to abstain from this vote because it creates for me a conflict of interest. My employer and yourself have great relationships, so I don't want to spoil anything, but I respect your integrity, sir. And I know you are a man of your word, and you are an independent thinker for sure. But on this vote, I will abstain because of the conflict of interest.
Yeah, absolutely.
Councilman Hug?
Aye.
Councilman Morris?
Aye.
Councilman Mudrin?
Aye.
Councilwoman Quillman?
Aye.
Councilwoman Reardon?
Aye.
Councilman Turk?
Aye, and welcome, Herb.
Motion carried.
So the process will be, we meet next Monday and Tuesday. Or we're gonna do this, we're gonna swear,
Swear him in tonight, right?
Swear him in
tonight.
tonight.
Swear him in tonight if that's your preference.
However you wanna do it, Herb.
Pardon me, I didn't hear you.
We can either swear you in tonight or do it at Monday's pre-council meeting if you want other people present. It's
No.
kind of tough with COVID. We don't,
I think tonight's fine.
okay, we can move ahead then. That'd be great.
You can just stay right here. I'm just gonna stand on this side, and I'll stand on this side.
Okay, thank you.
This is just as a guide. You could raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, state your name,
I, Herb Landy,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support
that I will support
the Constitution of the United States,
Constitution of the United States,
the Constitution of the State of Illinois,
Constitution of the State of Illinois,
and the ordinances of the City of Joliet,
and the ordinances of the City of Joliet.
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
And I will faithfully discard the duties
of the office of Councilman at Large
of office of Councilman at Large
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability. Thank you very much.
Well, welcome.
Thank you, thank you. Sign this, ma'am?
Do we have anything else on the agenda tonight?
Welcome aboard, Councilman Lundy.
I hope to help. I'm here with an open mind and open heart and want to do what's best for the citizens of Joliet.
Very good.
And I think we all know that. I've been blessed to be here. I've been in this area 50 years and 25 years of it in Joliet, and the town's been exceptionally good to me. And what little I can do to repay them is just an honor for me, so.
Along those lines, there's a number of issues or things that we have to get you up to speed on. One would be, later this week, we are going to the city of Chicago and then next week to the city of Hammond to look at their water systems or the prospective water system. If you could be available, I think it'd be great if you could take that tour. It's supposed to be like about an hour and a half tour.
And what days are those, sir?
We're going, I think, Friday for Chicago. I'm not sure what day next week for Hammond, but.
It's a virtual one, I think, the next one.
Yes, for Hammond.
It's a virtual. Zoom.
So you don't have to go anywhere.
It's a Zoom meeting.
Well, Friday will be in person. though.
Yes.
And unfortunately, I have a procedure, well, I have a medical procedure Friday. It's an outpatient, but nothing serious, but it's been scheduled for weeks in advance, so I can't do Friday.
I'm touring with Mayor Lightfoot. I'll speak with her and see if she can
Okay,
make
yeah,
availability.
tell her I said hi.
Well, for one of
I'm
the.
an old Chicago boy. I was raised in Chicago, so I was a young man, so.
I
Very
knew
good.
it was something I liked about you.
No, but I was North Sider,
Well, that's okay. That's all right.
Sullivan High School. You know, I was a Sox fan though, so it doesn't
Oh,
matter.
all right, there we go.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
sir.
Councilman Landy, we do have public comments. If you wanted him to stay for public comments tonight, there is a seat
Yep.
over here.
No, I'd be more than happy to stay if I'm welcome, sure.
Well, we have public comments, but there was someone here, but no one is here to speak at this time, so.
Okay.
Okay.
You can't even wait for the hazing on the new guy, can you now?
And I did not receive a request for closed session, so is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Been motion and seconded to adjourn. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned.
All right.